With the new MyLowe's Pro Rewards American Express card, earn 3 points per dollar spent on Lowe's qualifying purchases for the first 6 months after card account opening. Plus, save 5% every day on eligible purchases at Lowe's and earn points on eligible purchases everywhere else Amex is accepted. Card members get more at Lowe's. Subject to credit approval. 5% can't be combined with any other offer. Exclusions and restrictions apply. Points subject to loyalty terms at Lowe's.com/terms and credit reward terms at Synchrony.com/MLPRA-terms. Visit Lowe's.com/business credit.
Looking for these better days.
It is Monday, June 1st. I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's what you need to know to make today a better day. It's championship week as the Stanley Cup final will begin tomorrow night in Raleigh. The Carolina Hurricanes against the Vegas Golden Knights. And then coming up on Wednesday night, game one of the NBA Finals between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. Plus, College World Series is underway. Well, not the World Series. It's the regionals to get to the Super Regionals to eventually get to the College World Series there in Omaha. But we'll have plenty of breakdown on that coming up on this edition of Better Day, presented by FanDuel. And we're going to start with the NBA Finals because we're going to be joined by AJ Hoffman here in just a moment. AJ and I spoke about the finals from a Spurs point of view. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to get the New York point of view. My guy Ty Butler from ESPN New York and SNY will be on the pod. So I kind of want to get both perspectives before we head to game number one coming up on Wednesday. Look, I tweeted something out after game number 7 of the Western Conference Finals. I definitely saw some clapback on Twitter as well, but I wanted to look up the numbers and I provided the information. And the information was, and I tweeted this out again after the game, playoff teams in the NBA coming off of a game 7 win, playing against a team coming off of a 4-game sweep, are 3-14 straight up, 4-13 against the spread in that game number 1. And a lot of people clapping back at me, talking about how, oh, well, the rest situation is different. Also, it's rare that, the team that's coming off the sweep is actually the road team. And I agree with all that. That's literally the history. We've only had 2 times where the home team has been the team coming off of the game 7 and the other team is coming off of the sweep in the other series. They're 0-2, by the way. And we've only had 1 time where that team has actually been the favorite, 0-1. So, yes, it is rare, but for the most part, going back to 2002, history of the database, 3-14 straight up, 4-13 ATS in game number 1. And if you isolate the early portions of the game, in the first quarter, those teams coming off the game 7 are 3-13-1 straight up and 2-14-1 straight up in the first half. So that does apply here to the Spurs coming off of a game 7 and the Knicks coming off of a 4-game sweep. But does the layoff hurt the Knicks? And are the Spurs the beneficiaries of a couple of days off prior to these NBA Finals? So let's get to our conversation here with AJ Hoffman. AJ, of course, hosts of the Morning Huddle, 94.1, the Sports Star in San Antonio. You guys know AJ. You love AJ. You follow him on Twitter at AJ is the Real. And AJ, you and I talked before game 7. And you told me that you thought the Thunder were going to win game 7, and they didn't. So now, how do you feel about your Spurs in the NBA Finals here?
I feel extremely confident about the Spurs. This was the boogeyman. This was the monster that they had to conquer. And if they were able to beat that team, it's hard for me to imagine that the New York Knicks are going to stand in their way. It does feel like I've said all year long, it feels like they're skipping steps. Yeah. And, young teams don't do this the first time they get to the playoffs because historically they don't. The Thunder, they had to, when they were the best team in the league 2 years ago, and they had to take their lumps in the playoffs. Going back to the Warriors before Steve Kerr got there in the Mark Jackson days, had to take their lumps before they made it. That's just the progression of a great NBA team. And the Spurs have just skipped steps all season long. And they talk about, we're not on anybody's timeline but our own.
Yep.
And it just feels like this is a team destined to win. And what they were able to do last night, I thought was beyond impressive. Like the fact that they got out to a big lead and gave it away at that point, I felt like, oh boy, here it goes. This is what, the Thunder do to teams. For them to weather that storm and to win the game the way they did, I think this team is battle tested. I still think this rest is going to give them a nice little boost of energy because they have been in a grinder with this team. But I think a few days off is going to do them good, and I think this team's built to win a championship. I think they raise up the trophy here in a couple weeks.
You see, that's the thing. The rest is the important thing that you mentioned, because a lot of people were up in my mentions because last night I tweeted out the trend that in the history of the NBA playoffs, when a team is coming off of Game 7, playing a team that is coming off of a 4-game sweep, in that Game 1, the team coming off the Game 7 is 3-14 straight up, 4-13 against the spread. And early on in those games, 3-13-1 straight up in the first quarter, 2-14-1 straight up in the first half. And everyone's up in my mentions, AJ, saying, but none of them have had 3 days off. So the rest, as you say, is going to be the big factor why the Spurs maybe don't have that letdown, you think, against the New York Knicks. And you said it when you were talking about last night's game. They have jumped out early in every single game. What's been the key to them starting these games so hot?
The key is Victor Wembanyama's playing time. I think we've talked about it before. If we haven't on here, we've talked about it off the air before, that the first quarter, Wemby plays until he's tired. He basically plays until he taps his head and says, hey, take me out for a little bit. All season long, he's been on, I don't want to say a minutes restriction, but they've carefully monitored how many minutes he plays. And the first quarter, this has just been the trend, is he plays usually about 10 minutes in the first quarter. And for a guy who will play maybe, in the playoffs, I guess he's playing more like 35 minutes, but 33 minutes. But for if that's when you divvy up the math there, it means that he's on the floor for most of the game in the first quarter. And also the first quarter, Wemby changes math, which is the best way to put it. When he is on the floor, teams who haven't spent a lot of time going against him, it takes a time to adjust what shots are available to you, what shots aren't available to you. It's you see all the time blocks and things like that, but there's a stat that we've kind of made up on our show called nopes, where guys go into the paint and they think they're going to get a shot that they normally get, and they have to go, nope, can't do that, because Wemby changes the math. He changes the angles you're able to shoot at. I think you saw Shea struggle with it a lot in this last series, and it's hard for teams to adjust to that. So I think early on, that being on the floor with him is just a different story for some of these guys, and it's a difficult adjustment to make. So Wemby being on the floor and teams having to adjust to playing with him on the floor, to me, that's the biggest difference why the Spurs in the first quarter have been so dominant, basically all season long, but particularly in these playoffs.
Any thoughts about when these two teams met up in the NBA Cup final? Wemby at that point was coming off the bench with the minutes, cautious minutes restrictions, if you will, as you mentioned. Any reference to that performance, seeing the Knicks beat the Spurs, and, the Spurs were coming off the win against the Thunder, so kind of like the same deal here where they got over the hump. They feel like they beat somebody, and then they lose here to the New York Knicks. Is there anything that you can take away from that performance to look at this series, or are you just washing it away and just saying this is a different Spurs team right now?
It feels like a different Spurs team, and there's really two reasons. One is that NBA Cup win, that was when Wemby was, I think, 25, 26 minutes he played in that game. He was clearly coming back slowly from that injury. And the other thing to note was Dylan Harper was just becoming a rotation player for this team. He was just starting to get real minutes. And I'm pretty sure in that NBA Cup, he had that was like one of his first breakout games in that loss. And if you remember that game, the Spurs were in control of it for most of the first three quarters. And in the fourth quarter, the Knicks took over. That happened to a lot to the Spurs early on in this season. They would get a lead built up, and then in the fourth quarter, they would let it whittle away. And Wemby has specifically come out and said, we had to nip that in the bud. We had to find a way to make sure that we're a four-quarter team and adjust our pacing to where we've got the energy, we've got the juice to play in the fourth quarter. That was also a Harrison Barnes start, if I'm not mistaken. Harrison Barnes was a heavy rotation player at that point. He's since been relegated to light bench minutes. Julian Champagnie, who is the best shooter on the Spurs team right now, is the guy getting those minutes. And it just the rotation's a lot more settled now. And again, the Wemby getting more than 25, 26 minutes is obviously a pretty huge deal. But Wemby was also the Knicks losses. He took both of them very personally, because remember the other loss to the Knicks broke their 11-game win streak. So there was a couple times where Wemby was peeved that they lost those games because he wanted that NBA Cup, which I didn't think it really mattered to the players until I heard him talk about it. And the breaking that winning streak was something that frustrated him as well. And he thought that they maybe gave too much credit to the Thunder, and like that win felt like such a big win that they were able to let off the gas. He said that's not going to happen again. We'll see if he's right.
Game 1 coming up on Wednesday. Shop around different lines. Spurs are a 4.5 to 5. I've even seen 5.5s on the board. So depending on which side you're on, absolutely shop around, get the best line available here. But it is about 4.5 to 5 consensus here for game number 1. Spurs the slight favorite in this series. AJ, the total games is 5.5 minus 170 to the over. Is this a 6 or more game series, or can you see it ending in 5?
I could see it ending in 5, but I think it ends in 6.
Okay.
I like the Spurs minus 1.5 game line, which is just over even money, like plus 110, plus 115. That's probably the way I'm going to go at this game or at this series. You mentioned the price on the first game, minus 4.5, minus 5. All of the home games for San Antonio against Oklahoma City were minus 3.5.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard for me to picture a world where I consider the Knicks just 1 point worse than the Oklahoma City Thunder. So I feel like even on that line, there's some value. I heard what you were saying about the teams off of game 7 against teams off of a sweep, and those numbers are daunting. But I just think there's a little bit too much respect given to the Knicks right now based on what they've done in these playoffs. They're blowing teams out and, it's hyped up. But I think we've also seen the Eastern Conference is not what, it is not the Western Conference. Let's just put it that way. And I think the Knicks are in for a bit of a rude awakening. So I like the Spurs minus 1.5 games, and I like the Spurs in game 1 while the line is still low, because I think after game 1, we're going to see this thing more like 5.5, 6, maybe in game 2, because I think game 1 could be a bit of a blowout.
All right, well, there you have AJ Hoffman's take of not just game 1 coming up here on Wednesday night, but also the entire series, NBA Finals between the Knicks and the Spurs. Coming up tomorrow on the pod, we'll be joined by Ty Butler from ESPN New York and SNY as we get the New York perspective on the NBA Finals and game number 1 in particular. Taking a look at FanDuel, the updated odds for game 1 of the NBA Finals. Spurs minus 4.5, total of 218.5. Also coming up tomorrow, with it being game number 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, we will have a preview of the series between the Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes with best bets for game number 1. I can tell you right now, I imagine goals are going to be hard to come by in this series. I think I'm going to go under on pretty much every single game, maybe. But there are some bets that I think I'd like to make, and in particular, I do think the series goes over 5.5 games, but there are creative ways to get at that bet where you can actually be getting some plus money, and you can actually lock in a better profit than you would just normally playing that straight prop of the series to go over 5.5 games. So we'll talk about that on tomorrow's pod. It is a big week in college baseball. The regionals were this weekend, and they are still going to continue today with the IF games, and we head to the Super Regionals as the road to Omaha begins. Coming up, Jake Hassan will preview the college baseball action coming up today. So the college baseball regionals will continue today with the playing of the IF games, the elimination games, like the game 7s, if you will, because the teams that won yesterday forced the IF games today. So we play another game to see who will advance to the super regionals. Yesterday, it was a huge upset as the number 1 overall seed for the second year in a row doesn't even make it out of their own regional, as UCLA was upset by St. Mary's. This is a team that went, I think it was 52-8 this year, and does not make it out of the regionals. They did not lose a single series all season long, and they became the first number 1 overall seed in the NCAA baseball tournament to lose their opening round game, their opening game in the regionals, when they lost to St. Mary's on Friday. They bounced back with a win, but then they were eliminated by St. Mary's yesterday, and that is just a shocker. It changes the way that we look at the bracket here moving forward in college baseball. Without further ado, to preview today's if games and look forward to the Super Regionals. He is our very own Jake Hassan.
It is Monday, and we are still not done with regional play in the NCAA baseball tournament. And we have some Game 7s on the line here. A couple of Super Regionals punched, which we'll talk about those in just a second. But let's start with these Game 7s. We'll just move through the bracket here. West Virginia against Kentucky later on today. And I don't know how you're going to go against West Virginia after they win and come from behind fashion in Morgantown. Absolutely electric atmosphere. Even though it's going to be a Monday, I think that stadium is going to be packed, and I think they are going to be dying for a reason to play Country Roads once again. Kentucky, I give them credit for getting here, and I give them credit for making this more of a competition than I originally anticipated it being. But this West Virginia team is so deep. They don't quit. The pitching staff is still super deep, and you still might see them go back to some of their starters here to try and win a do-or-die Game 7. They'll throw the kitchen sink here. Moving on across the bracket, Florida and Troy. I mean, Florida, I gave them credit all weekend for winning their first couple of games by the skin of their teeth. And then, of course, they just go and they get absolutely embarrassed by Troy on Sunday. I do still think that Florida is the better team here, and if Florida is able to win this game, the path to Omaha and the path to a championship is wide open for them because they're going to go ahead and end up playing Little Rock in the Super Regionals, which I think Little Rock is going to have a chance there and will make it competitive, but I'm still going to like Florida overall. So if we're talking about Florida and Troy in a vacuum, I do like Florida. Maybe you see Aiden King on one day of rest because he's their best starter. And again, like I was saying with the Kentucky and West Virginia game, you got to throw the kitchen sink. You got to go with everything. I think Florida should be good in a bounce back spot here, even though they had the embarrassing loss on Sunday, gave up a ton of runs. They clawed back a little bit. They made it a little more interesting in the late innings of that game. I still lean Florida in this one, but I do think the over is going to be a good play with Florida and Troy because you're running on fumes with the pitching staff in that one. Keeping it moving here, Texas A&M and USC. Man, I said USC can't score, and all they did was respond by putting up almost 30 runs in their two games on Sunday. Credit to them. They proved a lot here, and I really like what they're cooking with. I think Texas A&M does still edge this one out. If you could promise me that we're going to see Mason Edwards for SC, for the Trojans, then maybe I'd be a little bit more interested. But I think Texas A&M at the end of the day, SEC team, better offense, better star power in the lineup, which I think is the big thing here. And I would go with Texas A&M. I think they're the right side. I think they'll be the ones to advance and play UNC in the Super Regional. And I'll be betting UNC in that series with everything that I got. And the story, one of the stories of the weekend, Milwaukee. They punch Auburn in the mouth on Friday. They don't lose until Sunday with Auburn. And I think Auburn is now, they're mad, they're ticked off, they're ready to make a run here and claw their way out of the losers bracket and win their own regional. I think it was a nice story for Milwaukee, but I do think that the Cinderella magic has run out here. I would lay Auburn on the run line. I think they're the number 4 overall seed for a reason in this tournament. Milwaukee they had enough to get here, but I think they needed to win on Sunday, and they couldn't do it. They let Auburn live. They let Auburn survive, and now you're reaping and I don't want to say benefits because, again, Auburn's ticked off, and they want to prove a point here. So I think Auburn is the right side of that one. The other Game 7s that we got on the other side of the bracket, starting in Tallahassee with Florida State and St. John's, I'm going to bet St. John's. They're going to be the dogs here. I know Florida State is the host, but I've been really impressed with the Johnnies, and I've been really impressed with just the way that they've run. I know it was a little close with Northern Illinois, but the Johnnies were able to run away with that one at the end of things there. So I like the Johnnies. I mean, they put up 21 runs in their game against Northern after they beat Florida in extras in the first game. Then they put up 21 runs. I'm going to like the Johnnies. I think as dogs, they can get it done. I've said this before. I think that Florida State, once Miles Bailey went down, that was kind of the end of their season. They didn't have the same juice as they did before. Last game of the day, which is really, really interesting, Georgia Tech and Oklahoma. I did not think we were even going to get to a Monday here, but Oklahoma on Sunday comes through after losing to Georgia Tech 9-3 on Saturday, and then Oklahoma claws their way out. They win 15-8 on Sunday, forcing the do-or-die Game 7. I think this is just a straight-over game. We know what Georgia Tech can do. We know the star power in their lineup. We know that this is their bread and butter, is just to score runs on you. But Oklahoma, they don't really have much of the pitching staff. So Georgia Tech's going to get theirs. I think Oklahoma can get theirs, though, too. We saw them score 15 runs on Sunday and get the win. Georgia Tech's pitching staff has been kind of their weakness the entire way here, and been the entire season that the pitching staff has been a little bit vulnerable. So I think this is just a straight overplay. I do think Georgia Tech gets the win to go on and face Kansas in the Supers, but I think the over I think that's going to be double digits for both teams. So if we're talking about bets for today, it's the over in Georgia Tech and Oklahoma. It's St. John's on the money line in that game. It's going to be Auburn on the run line in the second game against Milwaukee. And if I had to make a lean on Texas A&M and USC, it would be Texas A&M. Same thing with Florida. And then I love West Virginia going against Kentucky. Real quick, if we want to talk about some Supers matchups, if West Virginia can pull it off and win their region, Cal Poly, great run for them. They win the UCLA region. They win the Los Angeles region, coming out of the number 1 overall seeds region. But I think West Virginia is a much deeper team. I like them a lot more. Like I said, Florida, if they can get it done over Troy, then they go on to play Little Rock. I think the door is wide open there for Florida. I'll love UNC against whether it be USC or Texas A&M. I think UNC is a much more complete team. They didn't lose a single game in their region, even though I thought they might be a little bit vulnerable. Proved a lot to me. And then Georgia. Even without Trey Phelps in Game 1, he got ejected on Sunday for celebrating. He says he was celebrating with his family. He got ejected for quote-unquote taunting. That's neither here nor there. But I still think Mississippi State is a little bit fraudulent. So I'm going to go with Georgia. I'm going to bet them on the run line, honestly, in every game. Love Texas over Oregon. And then Alabama, I think they just beat whoever comes out of Tallahassee. I think it'll be St. John's, but regardless, I don't think that matters. But that does it. College baseball, super back, super regionals in our back pocket here. Really excited for what we got going on as we get on the path to Omaha. Follow me on Twitter at TheJakeHassan. Follow SansHacks.substacks.com. We'll continue putting out the content at both of those for the super regionals and as we move on to Omaha and eventually crown a national champion.
Great stuff from Jake. As a reminder, Jake Hassan and Colby Marchio will stream their Off the Board podcast every Wednesday and Friday live on the Better Day Twitter account, which is at better_day, better_day, and on the Better Day YouTube page. So make sure you are subscribing to the Better Day YouTube page also, because we got more video stuff that's coming here throughout the summer as we gear up towards football. And speaking of, I do want to make a couple of quick announcements. We will have an announcement that is going to go out to members and non-members alike within the month of June here, as we're going to be making some changes to the site and the memberships and everything that goes along with what we do here at Better Day in July as we gear up towards football season. Right now, up on betterday.com, our new and advanced live odds and scores page is free for everybody. You don't even have to be a subscriber to the newsletter. You can just go to betterday.com and use our live odds and scores page as your default live odds and scores page. It shows you all the games of the day. You have lines from all the sports books, DraftKings, FanDuel, MGM, Caesars, Rivers, Hard Rock, ProfitX, Novig as some of the exchanges. You could sort by some of the derivative bets as well with live scores and live lines there. You can also click on every game and get all the props and the derivative markets. Literally, it is the best odds page you're going to find out there, and it is free up on betterday.com. Now, for you Better Day Insider and Premium members, our MLB Game Center is new and improved. Nothing really changed with the Game Center, but I did add a separate prop tab to the MLB Game Center, which now provides you with a drop-down menu where you can select the game, you can select the player and the prop. You'll get our prop projections on that stat. You'll also get the hit rates, what that player has done on that prop in the last 10 games, as well as sourcing the best lines from all of the sports books and showing you where the best line is available. All of your prop research in one place on the MLB Game Center up on betterday.com. That's in addition to the First Five database, the strikeout props database. It's all there for you at a fingertip. One click of the mouse away up on betterday.com. So join us, become a Better Day Insider now, and take advantage of all the tools and resources we have available for you. And it's only going to get better, of course, once we get into football season with the NFL Trench Report and, of course, the new, for this coming season, the College Football Trench Report. We're going to have more great prop projections and research available for you. It's just a great time to jump on board with us. I couldn't be more excited for what's to come. For Jake Hassan, AJ Hoffman, I'm Scott Seidenberg. Here's hoping you make today and every day a better day.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So, what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.